She was a gorgeous young girl, a minor, someone destined to be famous, popular, and make a name for herself. But all of this was cut short. She was a star in her own right, a rising one at its best. But all of this came crumbling down because of what? One crime, saying no. But is it really a crime to say no to unwanted advances of a man? Recently, Pakistan was shaken by the tragic murder of a 17-year-old girl. It's horrifying, but sadly not surprising in a society where women's boundaries are constantly violated and rejection is treated like an insult. Today, I want to go beyond the headlines. As a psychologist, as a woman, I want to talk about what this case reveals. Not just about gender dynamics, but about the psychology of entitlement, male aggression, and what's commonly referred to as incel behavior. This is part of our ongoing series in which we talk about psychological concepts and humanity. Today's episode is going to talk about some serious issues such as non-consensual intercourse, male aggression, the unaliving of a person. So if you are sensitive to any of these topics, please take care of yourself, and we will see you in the next one. Viewer discretion is advised. Incel behavior, what it is, how it affects perceptions of people, integrating it with the recent case of Sarah and the Netflix series Adolescence. The video will be divided into 4 segments. Each segment will deal with one part of the problem. Segment 1. What is incel behavior? The term incel stands for involuntarily celibate. It started as an online support group but evolved into a toxic ideology. It's rooted in the belief that men are entitled to intercourse and affection, and when they don't get it, they blame women, feminism, or society, anyone but themselves. Belief system fuels misogyny, aggression, and a distorted sense of victimhood. It is beautifully portrayed in the Netflix series The Adolescence, where we see a minor who has committed a crime and is now investigated. The series revolved around the question of why. It talks about the deep-rooted issues in society. The 3rd episode of the series is a must-watch for all of you out there who want to be great psychologists, or who are psychologists working in the profession, or the people who generally are interested in the whys and hows of the society. When that incel culture mixes up with poor emotional regulation, which is unfortunately a major part of Pakistani culture, lack of understanding of emotions, lack of empathy, and no access to psychological help, it becomes extremely dangerous. What happened to Sarah is an example, extreme but real, of what happens when entitlement goes unchecked. Incel behavior is not just about being single. It's about a wrapped up belief system that women owe men love, intercourse, and attention. And if they say no, they're blamed, hated, and sometimes, most of the times, harmed. Now let's talk about segment 2, the psychology of rejection and male ego. In many cultures, boys are not taught how to handle rejection. Instead of processing emotions in a healthy way, they are taught that no means they were not men enough, and that breeds shame and rage. This is especially dangerous in societies where toxic masculinity is normalized. A woman saying no is seen not as boundary but as humiliation. This wrapped thinking leads to controlling behaviors, stalking, and in some horrifying cases, the mindset comes from a mix of low self-esteem, learned entitlement, inability to regulate emotions, and sometimes even early trauma. Men in our society turn their pain outward. They don't cry, they control. They don't process, they punish. And men in our culture are often raised with these unspoken beliefs that their worth comes from their power, acceptance, and dominance. Them being rejected means weakness. Women are somehow obliged to return affection or love. So if a girl says no, it's not just a boundary. No, 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 no. Nobody talks about boundaries in our culture. So if a woman talks about boundaries or just tries to establish a boundary, it's interpreted as direct attack on their fragile ego. This is the seed of incel thinking, belief that women deserve punishment if they don't oblige. Now we are moving to our segment 3, that is emotional literacy. No means no. Unfortunately, in our society, men have never learned to deal with a no. They have no emotional vocabulary, no coping tools, no empathy training. They see women not as people but as a way to validate their manhood. And when that validation is denied, they explode. Sometimes inward into depression and sometimes outward into violence. It's heartbreaking that we even have to say that. No is a complete sentence, period. If a woman, especially a young girl, says no to a proposal, a message, a smile, it is her right. It must not be taken as an insult. But in societies like ours, where women are taught to stay silent and men are taught to dominate, rejection is seen as a challenge. Sarah said no. So she paid for it with her life. We cannot just treat these as an isolated crimes. We just cannot. These are symptoms of deeper illnesses. A society that refuses to teach boys that women are not objects and that consent is not optional. That is why we need early psychological education about emotional regulation, boundaries, and healthy masculinity. Schools and parents must start talking about rejection as a normal part of life, not as a threat to ego. With this, we are moving to the segment 4 of this video. What parents, school, and therapists can or must do, especially in our society. As a therapist, I have worked with adolescents struggling with aggression, obsession, and identity confusion. What helps is safe space, validation, and psychoeducation. But the system as a whole must support it. Schools need trained, I repeat, trained counselors. And parents need to stop glorifying hyper-masculinity and start teaching empathy. Ask your sons, how do you deal with rejection? Ask your sons, how do you deal with rejection? What does it mean to respect someone's no? Ask your daughters, do you feel safe to say no? Because if the answer is no, we are failing as a society. This case must not end in social media outrage. It must lead to education and reforms. As mental health professionals, I call out to you all. We need to start working together more deeply with boys and young men. Schools must implement consent education and provide psychological support. Parents need to talk about rejection, empathy, boundaries, and not to just protect others, but to protect their own sons from growing into disconnected, rage-filled men. Girls and women must be empowered to say no and supported when they do. With this and heavy heart, we come to our conclusive segment. I call out for action. Comment below. Have you ever felt unsafe with a man or unsafe for feeling or saying no? If you're a man, how do you take rejection? Comment below, how do you feel about it? Why women have to oblige to your advances? How do you think we can prevent this from happening again? If you want to understand more about psychology, psychological issues, common humanistic issues in the light of psychological concepts, join our community. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any episode. And comment below what we should talk about next. Like and share. These small gestures on your part means a lot to us. So yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you again next time.